caucus and reprimanded at Queen's Park.
Being criticized so harshly for an opinion must be upsetting.
How voters in Sarah Jama's Hamilton riding are reacting after her online comments about the Israel-Hamas war saw her booted from the NDP.
The process was one that I was just not comfortable with. You can't stick your hand in the cookie jar and take the cookies out and then put them back in and pretend nothing happened.
Plus another housing backtrack. The Ford government cancels zoning changes in about a dozen municipalities. Why the opposition says it wants better answers.
I'm very overwhelmed and this is crazy, but I am truly honored.
And a once-in-a-lifetime experience twice. I sit down with the Toronto opera singer, shocked to be called up on stage to sing alongside superstar Shania Twain. How this moment has been in the making since the first time she sang with Shania at just 8 years old. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. We begin tonight with a controversy swirling around Sarah Jama. The now former NDP provincial member was booted from caucus today and officially disciplined by the legislature after comments she made online about the Israel-Hamas war. In a moment, we'll take you to her Hamilton riding to get a sense of how her constituents are reacting tonight. But first, let's get you the latest on the political showdown at Queen's Park. Lorenda Redekop has our top story tonight.
I recognize the member for Hamilton Centre.
Sarah Jama speaking for the first time since her statement on X, formerly Twitter, now viewed more than 3 million times.
Since I made this statement, Israel has only escalated its assault on millions of Gazans.
Jama's original statement didn't mention the killing of Israeli civilians by Hamas, instead focusing on decades of violence against Palestinians. She did later apologize online. The PCs wanted the statement retracted and deleted, plus an apology in the House. They didn't get that. Instead, she was emboldened.
The Ford government has done nothing meaningful to say about these atrocities and has now targeted me to distract from its own scandals. I ground my words in the realities of the Israeli apartheid and Israel's ongoing domination and occupation.
Hours later, the NDP leader kicked her out of caucus, admitting Jama's comments this morning came as a surprise.
There's a point at which, as a team, you cannot continue to move forward when one person just continues to act unilaterally and not in good faith.
Jama returned for the vote to censure her. The motion passed, the PCs voting in favor, the NDP and Green Party against, the Liberals abstaining, meaning Jama is now banned from speaking in the legislature.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Jama's supporters chanted immediately after the vote. On the way out, other supporters tried to block her from cameras. Jama choosing not to speak outside the legislature, where she still can.
Why won't you comment, Mr. Jama?
Why won't you stop and talk?
The interim Liberal leader defended his party, choosing not to vote on this motion.
It extended this debate. It stretched this debate out way more than any other legislature or parliament here in Canada. And it's divisive, it was wrong, and that's why we said we're not participating.
The Green Party leader was surprised. The NDP stood by Jama as long as it did.
I think they probably should have acted quicker than they did, but that's something that the NDP will have to answer for.
There's still one more part to this story. Last week, Sarah Jama's lawyer sent a cease and desist letter to the Premier saying Doug Ford was defaming her with a social media post of his own. Today, the Premier's lawyer responded, vowing to fight any legal action, and they won't be deleting that post. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Reaction to Jama's censure and removal from the NDP caucus has been swift, especially in her riding of Hamilton Centre. Tyler Cheese has that part of our coverage tonight.
In Hamilton, there were plenty of people showing support for local MPP Sarah Jama.
It's a shame because a lot of young people don't know, especially young people who look like us, don't know their place in politics a lot. And for a lot of us, Sarah Jama was a representative of just being part of the next generation.
Some people quick to speak up for their local provincial member following her removal from the Ontario NDP caucus today.
Being criticized so harshly for an opinion must be upsetting. That must be a hard thing to face.
Yeah.
I also kind of agree with her, so it's one of those, it's kind of crummy that she's getting so backlash for it.
I think it's fair for people to have opinions. I also think it's fair to face criticism and backlash for that. I think it's sad that so many people are anti what she says, and that she is, being criticized so heavily for that opinion.
But not everyone feels the same way.
Her statements just caused absolute distress.
The CEO of Jewish human rights organization B'nai B'rith says Jama's support of Palestinians has harmed the Jewish community she represents and all across the country.
And while it's entirely fitting to also care for those in Gaza, those innocents in Gaza that are also suffering, at the end of the day, this is a war, and this war began with terror. And there needs to be an understanding that Israel does have the right to defend itself, and we just don't see that from Sarah Jama.
The National Council for Canadian Muslims also weighed in a statement writing, "We have heard much concern and anger from our community about the decision to not only censure Jama, but also remove her from caucus." The nonprofit went on to add, "Today's decision and this entire episode will have negative consequences for the people Jama represents, including Muslims, Black Canadians, Palestinian Canadians, and others."
Seeing her removal kind of makes that uncertainty of the future much more clear.
Back in Hamilton, some are just fearing what their MPP's situation means for the future of their representation at Queen's Park. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Hamilton.
Now to the latest backtrack by the Ford government, reversing controversial moves to open more land for housing. It is walking back boundary and zoning changes it forced on municipalities around Ontario. For that story, let's turn to our senior reporter at Queen's Park, Mike Crawley.
The Ford government had forced the city of Ottawa to expand its urban boundaries so that this chunk of prime farmland on its rural outskirts became part of the city. The government did the same thing with this rural property south of Hamilton, making the city sprawl against its council's wishes. All told, the Ford government imposed significant land use changes on a dozen cities and regions over the past year. The new housing minister is now canceling all of them.
As soon as I am able, I will be introducing legislation that would reverse the official plan decisions for Barrie, Belleville, Guelph.
Those decisions were supposed to be all about getting more housing built. At least that was the government's message when it imposed the changes.
Our government will continue to move forward with additional proposals to build the type of homes that Ontarians need.
But Paul Calandra now admits it was badly done.
Clearly, the process was one that I was just not comfortable with.
For that, Calandra blames Steve Clark, his predecessor as housing minister.
Too much involvement from the minister's office, individuals within the minister's office.
Political involvement in land use. That's exactly what happened with the Greenbelt removals, according to Ontario's Auditor General and the Integrity Commissioner. With the urban boundary changes, the opposition is asking, did the government use its powers to push up the value of land owned by certain developers?
You can't stick your hand in the cookie jar and take the cookies out and then put them back in and pretend nothing happened.
I think they're making the right decision, albeit a little bit late, but the right decision at this time.
The government is also reviewing the dozens of special zoning orders issued by the former housing minister to see if any of those need to be reversed too. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, let's hop outside live right now. 10 degrees and a chance of showers overnight. Nick Cernkovich is here with a first look at the forecast. Hey, Nick, what are people going to want to watch out for?
Well, Chris, I'm going to cut right to the chase, and it's the temperatures. Now, big difference from this morning. Earlier this morning, I mean very early in the morning, we were looking at temperatures of 0 degrees in the city. By the afternoon, though, we hit a high of 14 degrees, and that happened at 3 p.m. this afternoon. So that's above seasonal, and it's actually getting warmer as we move through the next 24 hours and actually right into the end of the week. Now, a little bit of scattered showers across the area. This is with the system, and it's right along sort of the warm front. As the warm front sweeps to the east of us here, we're dragging in a few isolated showers through the overnight period. By tomorrow morning, I think we're pretty much done with it, and certainly by the afternoon, we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud as the system clears across. Southerly and southwesterly winds and warm weather on the way for the GTA. 6 degrees tonight with a few showers. 18 though for tomorrow afternoon, and mix of sun and cloud. And believe it or not, it gets warmer toward the end of the week. We'll have your full forecast coming up in just a bit.
All right, sounds good, Nick. We'll talk to you again in just a few minutes here. The 401 is still partially shut down between Ajax and Whitby tonight after a woman died in a major collision this morning. Now, this all happened near Lake Ridge Road at around 8:45 a.m., and you can see the debris from an overturned transport truck scattered across the highway. A 25-year-old woman who was in another vehicle was taken to hospital with serious injuries, and the OPP announced tonight that she died in hospital. The crash shut down both the eastbound and westbound lanes of the 401 between Salem Road and Lake Ridge for several hours. Westbound lanes have since reopened. Now to Caledon and another incident from this morning. An OPP officer is in hospital and the province's police watchdog is investigating. Dale Manukduk explains what we know so far.
It happened around 7:20 this morning here on Tundra Road in Caledon. Ontario Provincial Police were responding to a call regarding a suspicious Jeep Wrangler. During that response, police laid down a spike belt on the roadway in front of that vehicle. It's believed that the Jeep ran over it while attempting to flee. The driver then struck an OPP officer and continued to speed away.
At about the same time, the other OPP officer who was on scene discharged his firearm, we believe 3 times. It's not believed that anyone was struck. However, we have forensic investigators looking into that. It appears that one of the bullets entered into a civilian vehicle through the windshield, and then a second one entered the vehicle that took off.
According to the Special Investigations Unit, it's unclear what happened to that third bullet. The OPP officer was seriously injured and remains in hospital. Meanwhile, the vehicle was located in a second location about 6 kilometers away at Haven Hill Road and George Gray in Brampton. Police say that there were at least 2 occupants of that vehicle. It's believed that they fled on foot and they have not been located at this time. The SIU investigation focuses on the discharge of the firearm by police. Meanwhile, the OPP are conducting a parallel criminal investigation looking for the suspects who remain at large, as well as any offenses they may face. Anyone with information is asked to contact them. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Caledon.
Welcome back. The housing crisis has been a major issue this year across the GTA, and $4 billion of federal cash is up for grabs across the country through the Liberals' Housing Accelerator Fund. It requires changes to bylaws and some creative thinking, the feds say, but some cities are calling for more flexibility. Marina von Stackelberg reports.
Canada's Housing Minister, Sean Fraser, with a message for municipalities. If you want federal money to help you build more homes, get ambitious or get left behind.
We are looking for the best of the best. We are looking for the most ambitious applications.
Ottawa has received some 540 applications, but Fraser is suggesting cities alter their proposals to increase their chances of scoring the funds. He says municipalities should offer up their own land for development, speed up building permits, and loosen restrictions on the parking and land they require for housing.
If there's a message for communities that are partway through the process today, if you see your neighbor stepping up their ambition and getting a successful agreement with the federal government, know that that's who you're competing against.
Ottawa also wants cities to change zoning bylaws, so land designated for a single house can be used for multiple units. That's something Mississauga, Ontario recently voted to do.
I have no direction from my residents as to whether or not I should be voting in favor of fourplexes as of right.
But some councillors who voted against that worry in the rush to rezone and access the money, they haven't studied the impact on public services.
For the federal government to impose its housing standards on municipalities across this country and then just dangle a little bit of funding in front of us to get us to significantly overhaul our zoning bylaws in our cities, I think is very disingenuous by the federal government.
Other cities have a plan, but think Ottawa needs to be more flexible with its demands.
When the minister asked for 4 units per property, we just don't see that fits for Charlottetown, because one method or one idea is not applicable to all. So as an historic city, we have to keep that historic look
I don't want to see the historic buildings in Charlottetown knocked over for small apartments, of course.
The federal government has reached funding deals with Halifax and several Ontario cities, including Hamilton, London, Vaughan, and Brampton. And in the coming few weeks, Ottawa plans to look at the applications from smaller municipalities and rural communities. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
In North York, tenants at 2 apartment buildings rallied outside their landlord's downtown office today to protest poor living conditions and above-guideline rent increases.
They have bed bugs, cockroaches, mice, mold and mildew, leaking windows. The garbage chutes don't work. The elevators are regularly broken down.
Tenants of 1440 and 1442 Lawrence Avenue West say their landlord, Barney River Investments, is not providing basic maintenance of the building while seeking above-guideline rent increases. They've been on strike since October 1st and became the 3rd and 4th buildings in the York Southwestern District to withhold rent payments. Barney River Investments did not respond to requests for comment. And Nick is back with a look at the long-range forecast. Some pretty unusual weather we're dealing with again. Hey, Nick?
Well, Chris, I talked about the temperatures, and we're going to talk more about those. And I want to sort of put things into perspective for you. And it gives you an idea of where we're sitting. Now, here's a look at the stats for today. So the normal, or the average high for this time of year, about 12 degrees. The normal low is about 3 or 4 degrees, depending on where you are across the GTA. Today, we were below normal in the early morning hours at 3 a.m., but by the afternoon, we hit our high that was above normal. And in fact, the temperatures are going to continue to rise as we move through the next few days at that. With it, we've got a few light rain showers that are moving across the region tonight. And then as we head into tomorrow, generally clears out. By tomorrow morning's commute, still some cloud cover, maybe a few isolated showers, but generally speaking, not much to speak of in terms of rainfall. Then by the afternoon, we've got a mix of sun and cloud. Most of the action in terms of the rainfall is well up toward the north, and it stays there for the next few days, except for a few light showers that are sort of on the southern side of this. So a lot of the heavier rain stays north. Down where we are, we're looking at some isolated showers. That takes us through Wednesday. I do think we've got a good chance of seeing some showers on Wednesday, certainly through the afternoon as well. Now, how much? A lot of the forecast models really varied on this right now, but generally speaking, not so much by Wednesday morning, but by Wednesday afternoon. We're looking at amounts that could reach about 5, maybe 6, 7 millimeters of rain, depending on where you are. The winds are going to pick up a little bit. Now, this model, a bit aggressive on the winds, but they'll shift to the southwest, and that typically means a warmer wind. Areas to the north around Collingwood, seeing wind gusts up around probably 50, 60 kilometers per hour, down around the GTA, closer to about 40. Overnight tonight, 6 degrees in the city of Toronto, similar temperatures elsewhere around the Golden Horseshoe. 18 tomorrow with a mix of sun and cloud. Now, it does look like a lot of wet weather here, but these are sort of on and off showers for the next few days. But heading into Friday, we're looking at a daytime high of 20 degrees before the temperatures drop. Chris.
All right, Nick, thanks a lot. And we'll... All right, we're ending tonight on a high note, and for most people, getting called up to sing with Shania Twain on stage would be a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Not so for Toronto's Daniela Agostino. She got to do it for a second time last night, and I spoke with her earlier today on CBC Radio's Here and Now about the full circle moment.
You know what? You want to hear some opera singing a little bit? Okay, I'll do a little bit of From This Moment On. I'm doing one phrase in an opera technique, and everybody go to the opera. It's so fun. Okay. Oh gosh.
Come on. Your voice is gorgeous. I'm so in awe. And I'm so happy that I was able to share the stage with you all those years ago.
I just love this moment. What was it like for you just now listening back to it and hearing it again?
Honestly, it feels like it happened to someone else. Like, it doesn't feel like it happened to me. I don't think it's like fully settled in yet. It was the biggest shock of my life. It really feels like
an out of body experience. I feel like I know what that phrase means now.
Well, and you really orchestrated this because from what I understand, you actually DM'd Shania Twain.
I slid into her DMs. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe she'll like see it and that would be so cool. Like, she should know that like I'm still her fan. So I was like, I'm gonna like tell her, I was like, I'm coming again, and I sang with you when I was a kid and everything. And so I guess they saw my message and they had like orchestrated this whole plan themselves as a team. And yeah, it was, I didn't think that shooting your shot actually ever works. So,
well, and you mentioned something on stage about how it changed your life forever, singing that song. Tell me a little bit about what that was like. How did it happen? And then how did it set you on this career to be an opera singer?
Yeah, well, I was, that little kid who just always sang around the house and would just quite never, like, I would never close my mouth if you paid me, just was always singing and always, wanting to make music and everything. So I grew up listening to Shania Twain and everything and singing all her songs. And when I got tickets to her concert as a gift, like from my family, I was so excited. And I knew that she like had a reputation for pulling up some of her fans on stage with her, and I was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be cool? So not being my like subtle little 8-year-old self, I don't know where I got the guts from at 8 years old. I made a sign that said like, pick me to sing, and not thinking it would work. And I like held up my little sign and everything. And when she was like, yes, come on stage, I was like, wait, what? Like, it worked? When I got off the stage, I just remember like feeling at 8 years old, like, oh my goodness, like to have people be so excited to make people happy and to be able to like do the thing I love the most, like, I want to ride that high for the rest of my life, not fully understanding and what that even meant at that point. And I just knew like, I want my life to be filled with music. And yeah, I went to study music and everything. So to look at your idol again and say like, you changed my life. Like that was like, if you can look back in your life and say like, that was the moment for me. Like that was the moment for me. Like where I was like, yeah, this is what I want. So it was incredible.
Thank you so much, Daniela, for being on the program.
Thank you for having me. This is just, I'm very overwhelmed and this is crazy, but I am truly honored to be here. Thank you so much.
What a beautiful story, and that's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow.